Hey everybody, so it's a balmy -7 in the garage. So I thought I'd update you folks on this sort of long-term project I've been futzing around with in the background. A bit of a false start. I had posted some previous videos of a Ducati Panta Cagiva All'Azzurra abomination I'd put together, and long story short, some compatibility issues, I think, with the carburetors and the engine. It just couldn't, no matter what I tried, seem to run correctly. So I thought I'd start again, because at the core of everything, I have this 2001 Ducati 600 engine, and it's only a 600. So certainly it wasn't a high performance lump, but it's I got it for cheap. It was a fun engine to play with. I've done some work on it so far. I did put a Faraci 680cc kit in it, and can't really see too well there, but this was a known leak spot for these engines because there was no O-ring channel excuse me, machined into the cylinder or the case. So while I had it all apart, I got a machine shop to do that for me, and it was, you know, done properly. Even measured the squish of the Viton O-ring to know how deep the channel had to be. The guy really knew his stuff. And I took the engine apart a couple of times, at least the top end anyway, and that's always good to learn from if you're into that sort of thing. Most of the people that seem to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and there's been a big boom this year, because in the background you can see my KTM 890 Duke R under wraps. I guess I don't know, it's a statement. More people seem interested in me bolting brand new parts onto a brand new bike than farting around with this ancient relic. But anyway, I know there's a few of you out there who are interested. So what have I got here? So it's the Monster 600 engine. I've got, as you can see, the traditional velocity stacks there, not Molossi intakes with Dell'Orto carbs. I did get a set of stock carbs to go with this, but then I stumbled across a set of very unique and rare, maybe I guess is the right term, Kian FCRs. Now they're not the 41s and they're not the 39s. They're actually a set of 33s. And the best I can tell, I think they were sold in limited quantities in Japan, which is where I got the carbs, and they were fitted to Monster 400s and Monster 600s because of the small valves that are in these engines. It seems to be the right bore size. So anyway, they're used, they're on their way here. As usual with most Japanese auction sites, the efficiency is astounding. I'll get them inside of 10 days shipped from Japan. Of course, DHL is going to take their cut. Revenue Canada with Customs and Import are going to take their cut. But anyway, it got here relatively quickly, and for a set of FCRs, well, they're not the super primo, super expensive 41s, which I think are too big for this engine anyway. They're 33, so I'll have to take them apart and service them, I'm sure, but they look complete anyway, and a lot simpler than the Mikuni BSTs that were on these things. And if you've done any research or talked to Krista Kelly at California Cycle Works, there's a lot of peculiarities with these carbs that have to be done in terms of vent hose, vent tubing, that sort of thing. So this is an SSIE frame I got from Guzitech from eBay, and again, odd shipping pricing things, like the frame was 90 bucks American, no title, but this is going to be a track bike anyway, and shipping was 70 bucks. Meanwhile, someone from Calgary wants to ship me another Ducati frame and wants to charge me $200 for shipping. So it makes no sense that I can get a frame shipped from California for 70, but 2 provinces over it costs 200. Anyway, these SSIE frames had decent geometry, but again, they were built for pillion and a bit overbuilt. So I'll maybe start at the back. I've certainly modified the back end. Normally these had 2 frame rails that extended probably out to here with an ungodly ugly tail section and that sort of thing. So what I did is I did some research, and these top frame rails are exactly 8 inches from outside to outside apart. And a company called OC Cafe Racer sells frame tubes or loops for various prices. So this is an 8-inch loop, and there's also a 9-inch loop. So I cut it off, can't really tell, somewhere around here on both sides. Fitted a sleeve, so this is 7/8 inch tubing that I had left over from another project. This male end slips perfectly inside the ID of this tube, but to fit inside the thicker Ducati tubing I had to grind it down, and so there's 2 sleeves in there, 2 rosette welds on each side, and then I fitted the loop and then finish welded it and ground it off. And then so to support this, it's probably a bit overbuilt because I wasn't sure exactly what direction I was going to take. I salvaged some leftover tubes. You can see how much extra tubing was in this frame. Like, this was part of the one side of the rear frame tube that was cut off here, so it's massive. So I reutilized this and put a support in there and a cross brace. And then, because I thought I was just going to leave these cut off, but it just aesthetically, I know you know, form follows function, that sort of thing. I couldn't leave it as is. So in hindsight being 2020, I should have bought a couple of these loops because they do combine shipping, and it's quality tubing. But I've got an 8-inch loop and a 9-inch loop on order, because I got the 9-inch loop and I might have another idea for a project with that one. So what I'm going to do is when the 8-inch loop comes in, I'm going to take it, cut it down the middle, and then fit it so it just sort of, you know, loops up like this, and you know, it'll be an interesting fish mouthing procedure to square it up, you know, obviously a square cut here, and then just have it taper on up here. An angled cut or whatever I wasn't interested in, I'll just use, and maybe somewhere in here or maybe here, we'll see how it looks. As you can tell, this tube also sits proud of the top frame rail on both sides, so it's going to have to sort of loop in at an angle. So it won't be an easy, you know, get out the tubing miter jig and done. You know, you got to be careful, because if you do it wrong and you screw it up, I've wrecked some bent tubing. Again, I probably could have found a place nearby that could have taken some 1-inch tubing from Canadian Tire and made a loop in it, but it's Christmas. Everyone's busy, everyone's off work. It just seems simpler to get what I already know and have worked with shipped to me. So what's this little hump here? Well, OC Cafe Racer also sells in both sizes, an 8 and a 9-inch, a seat hump to go with it. So it's kind of like a little cafe seat hump, and it just slides on here like so. That's relatively straight. But it took a little bit of finishing, and I think when I paint it, it's going to need some finishing, but it's not fiberglass or carbon fiber. It's a plastic composite of some sort. So anyway, that slips on here. I've got mounting holes provisionally drilled. I'm going to use some steel riv nuts there once I've got everything lined up and ready to go. So that looks kind of neat. And over there you can see some bent aluminum. Went in a wrong direction with that. I think I can salvage it, but basically this sits here, and this is the seat pan, and then it will go sort of down to here. With some foam on top, it'll get you relatively up to where it's supposed to be. So a lot of guys that use these frames to build like TT replicas or custom bikes, if you don't add some height to this this seat frame, you're sitting way too low, and this tank is up at your rib cage. So this tank comes up so high that you got to have a good, you know, almost 2 inches of seat foam just to get yourself perched up over top of that thing. So I've got some seat foam. I'll probably be buying some more just to shape into the right sort of contours and that sort of thing. So trying to keep it simple, you know, 7 inches wide here, flares out to 8 inches wide here, just simple cuts on the shear, some bending on the brake that I have access to, and good to go. So that's the back end. I do have a swing arm for it. I did find an aluminum swing arm again out of Japan for pennies. Shipping was a bit steep again, but for what you're getting, the stuff out of Japan is usually in great shape. Sometimes there's a bit of corrosion, but rarely, if ever, because the Japanese take care of their machines and they baby them. So it's actually off getting some swing arm spools welded to the underside, just because the 900 SS swing arms, none of them came with swing arm spools. So that kind of tells it was probably more designed as a street bike rather than a race bike. But hopefully those get done from Brent at Ironcraft, my master welder. So this is an old SSIE tank I had lying around. I stripped the paint. I've converted it just to work with gravity feed because I'm running carburetors, not fuel injection. So I don't know how well you can tell. I don't really want to take the tank off right now, but I've modified the underside. I've sealed off 3 tank spigots. I've added one that's going to go around this side of the frame and into the carbs that will sit right here. And with some suggestions from Krista at California Cycle Works, I'm going to run a little Mikuni vacuum pump off the intake manifold. Pretty trick and simple idea. The carbureted monsters use the same procedure with a massive Mikuni fuel pump here. This one's a lot smaller. And I'll put it on the opposite side, mount it up somewhere, and it should be enough. Some guys, if they keep their tank full enough, there's enough gravity feed to feed FCR carbs until it gets low in the tank. But because, you know, I'm going to be twisting the throttle on this thing on the track, I thought the vacuum pump would be a good idea. So carbs should be in soon. Repurposing these frame sliders from another project. Frustratingly, you know, I've always said, oh, I should get a lathe, I should get a lathe, I should get a lathe, and then I see how much lathes costs, and you know, I've always found people to do the work for me for cheap. But I need to machine like 5 millimeters off these spacers to allow the nylon in the nut to bite into that bolt. Maybe I'll take a centimeter off, but I don't have a lathe, and I'm not going to freehand it with a file or a hacksaw, so I'll have to find a time to take care of that. I did have an oil cooler fitted to this at one point, but considering this originally didn't come with an oil cooler, the 695 didn't have an oil cooler, and my buddy Wilson took his out to the track regularly, didn't bother with an oil cooler. I've just blocked these off for now. I might bolt one on somewhere. Certainly there's plenty of room. So going to the front, again, my favorite front end, which is the Triumph either 675 or Daytona. So this is a street triple front end because I wanted to fit bars to it rather than clip-ons. Again, I just find that you know, I'm not racing it, so handlebars just sort of, well, they suit me with the Duke as well. Some leftover master cylinders I had. So this is tiny. This is like a 12 millimeter master. And 13 or 14 millimeter clutch master, simplified switches. This is actually a Ducati throttle that I had left over from another project. But the forks are a bit of a hybrid again, Frankenstein. So this leg here is Daytona 675, or at least this inner leg is. This is street triple, so not adjustable. And you can see that what I did, not greatly again because I don't have a mill, but I've hacked off the brake mount for this side because I'm going to run a single radial caliper on this side, which I think will be plenty of braking for, you know, this machine. It's not going to be that heavy. And so again, this is your typical garage level eyeball engineering. People say that the 675 forks are too soft. The street triple forks are too soft. Daytona forks are too hard. So one heavy spring, one light spring, you know, rebound and compression, and a bit of preload adjustability in one fork. For a little track bike, that should be plenty. And the fender mounts up equally on both sides. So this is something I'd kind of put together over time, and I switched out the outers and the spacers between, because I had a set of street triple forks which are basically worthless, and I found one right hand side 675 fork that was straight and just used the internals and swapped it all over. So it's, I don't know, I've got most forks only have adjustability on one side now anyway, or compression on one side, rebound on the other. That's what the 890 has. So we'll see if it works. Again, I'm not going to need pro level Oline Superbike forks on a bike that maybe makes 55 horsepower. So so why Triumph? Well, I always like the Triumph stuff. It's good quality, and the wheels are light. So over here, we sneak on by the car. We've got the 675 front end, front wheel with brand new EBC rotor. One side's all I'm going to need. Again, used wheel. I actually had a nicer wheel that I sold for 300 US and then bought this for 125 US. Again, it's a track bike. It doesn't need to be pretty. I got to keep reminding myself that so I don't spend money on powder coating. But it's straight. Bearings will need to be replaced, but that's always the case with used wheels. Got rid of the Swiss cheese Torx bolts that were holding the rotor on. Had to use a bit of heat and some very gentle persuasion, and got the 5 of them out because I was going to start stripping things if I wasn't careful, and then put in good old quality Suzuki Allen rotor bolts with no Loctite because you don't need it. And then over here I found this rare bird. This is an actual it's the wrong sprocket on it, but this is a SS wheel with a 17-inch axle, but it's a 5-spoker Marchesini. So again, scored this out of Japan. This is a bit more expensive because they're rare, but the spokes match on both sides. It's lighter than the 3-spoke Brembos, and it fits right into the swing arm, and there's the rest of the hardware down there. So it's again, cosmetically, both of these wheels are in a bit of rough shape, but as long as they're straight and they don't wobble and the tires hold air, gotta keep reminding myself that's all I need. So when I eventually relent and strip this wheel to get it powder coated, you can all yell at me because I said I was never going to. But yeah, there's some nicks and scratches on this thing. It's these OEM wheels are usually painted, not powder coated, so it's not the strongest, most durable finish. So anyway, I'm going to look at getting a lighter rear rotor. This is a Ducati rotor. I'm not sure how well you can see it in the darkness, but weighs a bloody ton. So save a few pounds doing that. But yeah, it's slowly proceeding. It's one of those things where waiting on parts to come in and that sort of thing. I was able to reutilize the battery box I got made for the Panta project and starter solenoids down there, but it's one of those things where I have to remember to you know, got to be careful about what I can and can't do. Again, the garage is unheated. See the nice little gap underneath my insulated door. I have to smarten that up somehow. Maybe next summer is redo the weather stripping along the bottom, because an insulated door is worthless when you've got a seam like that along the bottom. But anyway, something to keep me busy. I'm just going to go with a straight number plate. This bracket, there's a gauge here, a key switch here only because it has the right amperage switch rather than me finding another rocker switch, and then an accessory rocker switch there for I guess powering the tack. So yeah, sort of trying to utilize leftover parts that I had lying around. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have an ETA on this thing. I kind of want to keep working on it as opportunity arises and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's been fun. I kind of had a crisis of confidence when the Panta project sort of was stillborn, and like, who wants to buy a monster 600 engine with a 680 kit in it? So I thought, well, take a step back, rethink, and do something with it, because it's a pretty expensive paperweight as it is. So hopefully I get it up and running this summer, and then strip it down and think what I'm going to do in terms of, I guess, not cosmetics, but I can't leave the frame like that because it'll rust itself to pieces. So yeah, that's where we're at so far. Updates on this aren't going to be too frequent, so If this is your thing, I need you to be patient. But like I said, I think most of the people that look at my YouTube page are more interested in a brand new motorcycle rather than this old thing. So anyway, I'll keep updating on that too as the summer goes on, and yeah, keep my sanity. Like and subscribe and tell your friends. Shoot for 170 subscribers.